Good afternoon. How's everyone today? Great. Excited. This is an impressive showing for a very impressive person. As Jesse said, I'm Stacey Wilson Hunt, an entertainment journalist based here in Hollywood, and I'm so honored to be here today to speak to Rami. So let's bring him to the stage.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out in the middle of the day. I didn't expect to see so many of you.
Yes, so very warm reception.
That's really nice.
How does it feel to get this kind of reception from your fellow actors?
It's pretty great. Yeah. I don't know who I'd want it more from, I guess. Yeah.
Well, yes, I think we're all here to hear. Yes. So obviously you're here today in some part, large part, because of Bohemian Rhapsody, but I would love to dig into the Rami story. It's an interesting story. And you've accomplished so much in such a short period, which I think is really part of what's so fascinating about you. But you grew up just over the hill in Sherman Oaks.
Yeah.
Go Sherman.
Yeah.
Any Sherman Oaksers in the house? Is that what you're called, Sherman Oaksers? I just made that up. I don't know. What was your life like growing up in the Valley?
Well, Graham does have this funny story. Graham King produced Bohemian Rhapsody, right. And one day he said to, I think Fox and a number of studios, I found our Freddie, and they said, well, where did you find your Freddie Mercury? And he goes, Sherman Oaks.
Unexpected place.
Yeah, unexpected place.
And they said, where's that?
Where's that? Yeah. Yeah, a bunch of British people going, excuse me?
What were you like as a kid?
What was I like as a kid? I don't know. I mean, that's a difficult question.
What would your parents say you were like?
I think I was very unusual, but we could all say we're very unusual. I let my imagination run wild because it was going to anyway.
You didn't want to put it in a cage?
I didn't put it in a cage.
Yeah.
It felt like it was bursting to get out, and I really didn't know how that was going to play out in my life. But
and how did that manifest? Did you put on little plays with yourself?
Yeah, but by myself. I was a little too reluctant to do it with other people, so it was just kind of like silent theater for myself.
An audience of one.
An audience of one.
And some of you may know or not know that he has a twin brother.
Yes. I do, yeah. I do.
How did that affect your childhood? Because I find that to be such a fascinating experience that probably very few of us can understand. What did that feel like as a kid?
It was phenomenal. Well, yeah. All of a sudden, the flood of memories come rushing.
It can't be totally easy all the time, too, I'm guessing.
No, it's not. But at the same time, you grow up and you have someone who you can just spend hours alone with in a room while your parents are doing their own thing, and you just make things up, right? We didn't need much. We kind of came up with games. We came up with things to do all the time, and we just joked around with one another and bounced ideas off of one another, and that was it.
So nice to come into the world with a best friend.
Yeah, I remember one day we wanted to play like one-on-one basketball, and we made a hoop out of just a wire hanger and put it on top of our closet, and then slam the door in it, and then play basketball with just socks, like you do. Right? But we all did that kind of, and it was just a create. It opened up a world of creativity, I think.
Wow.
Having someone who looked just like you could trust them, and you could kind of try anything. So I guess I'm crediting him for all of this success.
That's great. I love that. And what was your earliest exposure to acting specifically? Was it something that you saw that really stuck with you, or did your parents take you to see a performance?
No, they didn't take me to see it. I lived in the Valley, and I swear to you, you probably won't believe this, but I didn't even know that this side of Los Angeles existed till I was about 16 or 17.
Wow.
And that sounds crazy, but that's how sheltered I was. I mean, I just went to school and hung out with my friends and knew that Hollywood was somewhere around, but I didn't realize it
Were your parents sheltering you from Hollywood, or they wanted you to be more focused on academics?
Yeah, I think it was focused on academics. I'm a first generation American, so they came from Cairo, and they were just seeking a better life. And I think they thought, if we're paying for you to go to school here, you're going to do things that help you excel, and that was to be in politics or law or a doctor. And so I took debate class in high school, and that didn't really work out for me. But I had a great substitute teacher that came in one day, and he was kind of a comedian. His name was Lester Berry, and he could recognize, hey, you're not really cut out for this, but you can do this thing called a dramatic or humorous interpretation. I said, what's that? And he said, well, you just look at a play, and you can basically have it in front of you, and you act it out. And he gave me this one-man show. It's called Zoo Man and the Sign by Charles Fuller. And I remember taking it home, and I just read through it as fast as I could, and something happened. And I remember looking at it, and the first line was, my name is Zoo Man, Z-O-O-M-A-N, I'm from the bottom. And I just heard myself at, 13, come up with this new character that someone else had written that I just hadn't created in my head. And I felt powerful in a way. And I showed it to him about a week later, and he looked at me, and I think he had this look of, oh, that's not bad. I'm going to enter you in a competition. So.
Oh, wow. In your school?
In my school, but with other schools involved too. And so I invited my very strict father and mother to come see this and try to broaden their horizons.
Right.
And that was my most, I think, feared audience.
I'm sure. But we've all been there.
Yeah.
And what was their reaction to see you perform in that way?
It was very, very special, because I'd never seen them react quite like that, and my dad got emotional for the first time I'd ever seen him emotional. Really? Yeah.
Wow.
So.
And this is when you were 13?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I'm on stage, I'm having this moment with my dad with a bunch of other people, and but then I thought, wow, something really special is happening here, and I like it because it's. Something's happening that's never happened before, and I just realized in that moment the power that this all has.
Wow. And then did you instantly pursue acting opportunities in school and plays and
I
such?
did. I jumped into the theater department at Notre Dame High School. I had a great theater teacher. Her name is Judy Weldon. She's no longer there, and I tried to do everything there was, and I didn't always get cast in the plays, or sometimes I had a lot of small parts in high school, but I just loved it. And my senior year, I did get to play John Proctor in The Crucible.
Whoa,
and
that's a good one.
Yeah, well, I don't know how good it is at 17 or 18.
Right.
I think I just ended up yelling all of the lines.
Sure. Well, that's most high school performances.
Yeah.
A lot of loud talking.
Yeah, it was.
And accents and such.
That's exactly
But
what
that's
it
a lot
was.
of dense material for a 17-year-old.
I mean, at 17, we were doing Chekhov and Bernard Shaw and Shakespeare. She was great. I mean, she got me ready for things very, very
And you went away to college to Indiana.
Well, she was like, maybe you should think about doing this for a living. And I thought, well, I do. I really love it. But we were just working together a second ago on a podcast. Sorry.
It happens sometimes. People see friendly faces in the audience.
Where were we?
Did she encourage you to go away to school?
Yes, she did. I should just look at your notes and just
No.
She did. She said, "Do you want to do?" I said, "Yes, I do want to do this." And she said, "Why don't we take a look at some colleges that have good theater programs?" And I did. I thought, let's go to Chicago. Chicago's got great theater. So I was figuring out how I was going to get enough money to take a trip to go visit these schools. And she said, listen, I had auditioned for all these schools as well, and one of them was in Indiana, and they actually wanted to pay for me to go visit the school. My twin brother also auditioned, and we both got in. So I got a call, and I said, I'd love to come to your school, but is there a way I can make a stop in Chicago before? And
It's
they're
not too far.
It's not too far, no. They said, sure. And then I went on to Evansville, Indiana. And we take off from Chicago, and we fly over this small city, this tiny city, and I go, thank God it's not that place. That was Indianapolis. So when I start to descend into Evansville, I look out the window, and I couldn't see anything. And I immediately went, holy shit, brace for impact. Right? I'm not kidding. I thought something had happened. And I quickly realized, no, I was visiting a school in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I went that night to the school, and I saw Merchant of Venice put on by a bunch of kids who, they made me scared. They were so good.
That's a good feeling.
No.
I thought actors like to be scared. You guys always say, I like to be scared. No.
Yeah, I guess we do. Because I went.
You wouldn't do this job if you didn't like to be scared.
No.
I mean, it's pretty scary.
It's pretty tough, pretty scary. It's very tough and very scary.
So did you immediately pursue the Hollywood experience after college, the audition gauntlet? Did you come home, or did you want to stay in that region?
I auditioned for even more school. I went to audition for grad school, but I just couldn't afford it. I thought, I'm already in debt from school, from studying theater. There's no way, as much as I would love to learn more about this, I do want to kind of give it a go, too. And I went to New York, and I lived with a couple friends in a one-bedroom apartment. That was not fun.
Yeah, that's never fun.
But we did a bunch of theater all over New York. We put up our own plays. The school that I went to had writers and directors, and so we all just marshaled our forces together and.
So you had a good network of friends from college who had moved to New York.
Yeah.
Okay. That helps.
It does. It does. And then one day I went back to Los Angeles to visit family, and my theater director at Evansville, he said, I want you to meet a casting director. It was Mally Finn, and she's passed on, but she was incredible. And she looked at me and she said, just stay here for a while. You know Los Angeles, you grew up here, give it a go. I think something could happen for you. And I was like, yeah, right, okay. Why not? Okay, I'll move everything back home, and ended up moving back in.
With your parents?
Sadly, yes. I did save money.
We've all been there.
Yeah, save some money.
It's a smart decision if you can do it, yeah.
And then she said, listen, get your headshot and resume and send it to every agent you can, and go into every film school and just leave a box of them everywhere. Well, I went and did everything she said. I sent them to every agent, every school, and every casting agent as well. Yeah, and one day I got a call after doing this for quite some time and not hearing.
How long did it take to hear back?
Oh, a long time.
Like a year, a couple of years?
At least a year, yeah, before I even got one phone call out of it.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I might have got like a school play, a student film, not a school play, a student film.
Right.
Going back in history.
That's why we're here. This is the deep dive.
Yeah, the deep dive. And where was I? We were in an apartment at that time, and I remember stuffing these envelopes every morning, and I could hear my dad at one point say to my mom, that's a tenacious kid you have. And I was like, oh, yes.
That's a big compliment.
It was. From him it was.
Dad's gonna be tough.
Yeah. And we were living in just a 2-bedroom apartment. It was 4 of us, and I was just sleeping on the couch at that point because I wanted to get up early and get all this stuff done.
Did you have a day job during this time?
Oh, yeah.
What's the worst day job you had?
I had some pretty crazy day jobs, but one was I was working as a busboy for a long time at, I think it's called the Rockwell now, where they do all those musicals on Vermont. You know what I'm talking about?
They apparently do, yeah.
And I remember one day my boss came up to me, and I've been working my ass off there, and he looked at my cup of espresso that I made for someone, and he said, "That is an inferior macchiato." And That's when I was like, listen, something doesn't work out with this acting thing. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I cannot listen to you anymore.
Those words,
I still hear them all the time.
Well, fortunately, your macchiato skills are not inherent to your current your current line of work.
But one day, these manila envelope stuffing, it did work out, and well, I'll tell you what happened. I got a call from a casting agent, and I just submitted online myself to everything I could find that was like a line here or there, and Mara Casey from the Gilmore Girls called, and she said, could I speak to Rami Malek's agent? And I said,
Speaking.
Exactly. I said, speaking. And she said, well, we'd like to have Rami come in for the role of this. And she goes, does he is he SAG? And I said, no, actually, he's not. And she said, and who are you who represents him? And I'm Rami Malek. I'm currently representing myself. And she started laughing. And she's like, Rami Malek representing himself? Are you a SAG actor? And I said, no, but we can work on that, can't we? And she's laughing. She continues to laugh. She's like, listen, honey, call me back when you get reps and when you're SAG, we'll figure this out.
That's so great.
And I said, listen, you're laughing right now. We're having a good time. It's 3 lines on the page. How long is it going to take? I'm in Sherman Oaks. I can be in Burbank in 15 minutes. And she said, you know what? Come on in. Come on in. Yes!
I love that story so much.
I ran my little butt over there. And get this, so I sit down and I read with her, and she read with me a few times. We had a talk, and she said, come back for a call back later tonight. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So I go into a coffee shop, and I'm waiting and trying to work on these 3 lines over and over, which we've all done, right? How many different ways can you say 3 lines? And I get this call from one of the agents I'd been sending all these headshot and resumes to. Same day I have my first meeting with an agent. My brain's about to explode. I have a callback and a meeting with an agent after all this time. I couldn't believe it.
I love it.
And I went to see Kim Dore at a place called Defining Artists. She's not there, but they still are. And that was a very nurturing place for a while, and I can say that because she agreed to sign me later that day.
This is all the same day?
All the same day. I went in for the callback. I'm feeling like, okay, I'm on cloud 9. I don't need to get this. It'd be great. I go home after that, and the next day, I got a call in the morning from Mara Casey, and she said, they liked you, and you're going to be on Gilmore Girls. And you're going to get your SAG card.
Oh, that's so
But
great.
that took me about 2 years to pay for. And I'm not kidding. It took so long. I was like, well, I'm SAG eligible for so long.
Wow. And you played a young man named Andy.
God, this is going to take more than
No. We're not going to do. But I did interview you at Toronto a couple years ago.
Yes,
we
I
talked
remember.
about this. We talked about this seminal moment, and you said something that
I think you got me in trouble with I got myself in trouble. More on this later.
Yeah. But you said something that made me laugh, and anyone who's watched Gilmore Girls can understand. You said, I'd never been around people who spoke that quickly. And you said that was your hardest, even just jumping in for those 3 lines. And he played a friend of Rory's at the newspaper, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And that was funny because, yes, of course,
Yes,
Andy's
of course.
indelibly etched in your memory. But tell me what it was like to jump into that, because that show is super, super unique in the writing and also the banter that Amy Sherman Palladino created.
Yes. She's incredible, by the way.
She's very special, yeah.
She's very special. I'm a huge fan of
Maisel?
Aren't you?
It's great.
Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yes.
And Rachel Brosnahan. That girl can act. All right.
That's a good show.
We're here to talk.
We're here to talk about you. But what did you learn?
Where were we? What did I learn? Yes.
What did you learn?
My knees were shaking underneath the table, and they were speaking so fast. I was trying to remember my 3 lines that I'd probably said 100,000 times, and I started yelling them. I remember looking and saying, I can barely hear anybody talk. Why is everybody so quiet? And I just was used to being on stage. No one really ever prepared me for a microphone and a camera.
Right, inside voices. Voices.
Well, am I too loud?
No, you're perfect now. You have since learned how to speak appropriately to the room you're in, so well done.
Thank you.
So, not too long after that, you jumped into a giant franchise called Night at the Museum, which is, I think, earned $540 million worldwide and all the sequels, which is an amazing experience. Tell me what it was like to be on that set. We had Robin Williams, Mickey Rooney, Dick Van Dyke, Sean Levy directing. I mean, Ben Stiller obviously starring. That was a huge opportunity. How did that feel?
That was unreal.
Yeah.
I could not believe I got that job. I was over the moon. I mean, doing a film, a major huge motion picture, a huge film.
And how did you get that role specifically? Had someone seen you in one of the TV shows that you had?
No, I think that had a lot to do with playing a pharaoh and me being Egyptian.
Okay. But how incredible that someone who is actually Egyptian can play that part. That's pretty special.
Yes. I mean, they did see some other Egyptian actors. They saw a lot of Middle Eastern actors, so... and then I think I hit it off with Sean, who's become
He's a great
very
guy.
dear friend, great guy. He does Stranger Things now and
very
a bunch of other
Canadian
things.
man, yes.
Yeah,
He's
that's
very
exactly.
sweet.
Yeah, he's very sweet. This is a good story. I went to shoot in New York. We shot the exteriors first and
of the museum.
Of the museum, and at one point in Night at the Museum, the first one, there was a moment where we have to go outside in the snow. So me and Sacagawea and Ben Stiller's, yeah. It's funny when you think about it.
It's funny when you say it out
like
loud.
that. And Larry, the night guard of the museum, played by Ben Stiller, and Robin Williams with half a body at that point.
Yes, I remember.
I think I'm reliving all of this. We have to go outside the museum in the freezing cold, so we loot the all the clothes that get left behind are left in a you know what Lost and Found. So we loot the Lost and Found. It becomes a game show here. And I'm wearing this big puffy jacket as a pharaoh and these big kind of snow boots that have rainbows on them, and I start improvising with Ben Stiller for the first. He starts throwing lines at me, going off book, and then I'd start going off book.
Wow.
I had really prepared myself because I knew that might happen.
Yeah.
So I thought of some stuff to come up with, and I went home that night and I saw all those kids from New York that I went to college with, took them out for drinks at a bar, and I still had eyeliner on. I could not get this kohl eyeliner off.
It was very intense, yeah.
Very intense. And I just couldn't believe it. Get to buy my friends a round of drinks, and for the first time, and just improv with Ben Stiller and Robin Williams. I mean, I was over the moon. I go back to LA, we're about to shoot in Vancouver, and I see that my date to shoot keeps getting pushed. And I thought, man, what's going on? Something's going on. And I got a call from Kim Dorr, my agent, and she said, do you know if there's a reason why they have another breakdown out for the character of Achman Ra? I said, what? I go, this makes so much sense. Well, it turns out that while I was doing this film, I came up with this idea that Achman Ra was trapped in, a sarcophagus at Cambridge University, as it said in the script, right? So he'd become kind of like this Cambridge dandy, right? So maybe I had taken it a little too far. Yeah. And with the blue puffer jacket and the snow boots and the eyeliner that I couldn't get off for days, I think the movie studio, Fox, inevitably would do Bohemian Rhapsody, so this all has a great payback. But they were a little concerned about my depiction of the Egyptian pharaoh. So fortunately, Sean goes, come on up. we're gonna do a makeup test, and you got to give me a different read on this character.
Even though you'd already shot the exterior.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
They were ready to move on.
Oh boy.
My first job, I was like, this business is tough enough, right?
It's so tough.
I mean, come on, give me a break. But fortunately, I think Stiller had some faith in me, and Sean had some faith in me, and they pushed, and fortunately, I made my way back in there. I clawed my ass back in there. And
so how much did you learn from that about? There's a point to which maybe over-interpreting, the script, or maybe bringing too much of yourself to it, or did it just?
I'm not going to say that was my fault. Looking back on it, I think I really enjoyed what I was doing.
Okay.
I might have watched Pirates of the Caribbean a few too many times. But I was like, hey, you got one shot at this, right? I'm going to be bold.
And there's nothing to say that Farrah wouldn't have had a lot of swagger. There's nothing to say that.
I agree. I remember at one point I was coming out of the sarcophagus later on, and I said, one thing I'm not going to get rid of is like throwing through the wrapping over my shoulder. And I don't know if it ever made it into the movie, but it was the last thing I was kind of holding on to. My last bastion of saying, this is the way I'm going to do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. You asserted your artistry from day one, which has worked out well for you, I think.
It was a good lesson. It was tough. It was tough every day. I haven't really ever said this, but there were days when I don't think ever, had closure with that whole experience of, not quite feeling good enough to be there. Like I was always on my back foot.
It was interesting too, and probably why the business is as tough as it is, that no one pulled you aside in the moment and said, maybe let's tone it down a little bit. You're hearing this third hand, you're hearing that there's another breakdown floating around. Why didn't someone come to you and say, this might be a little bit far flung from what we were thinking?
I think Sean Levy was actually quite happy with it. It was. So
it was once it went to the studio level, and they were like,
yeah. But you know what? It's
their prerogative. Obviously, it's their movie.
It's their movie. That's what I learned real quick. It's not about you. And once you start to make it about you, then you're in trouble. So it was a really good lesson. Is that you start looking around and you go, oh yeah, there's Robin Williams, and there's Ben Stiller, and there's a whole cast of characters right here, and an entire crew, and millions of dollars that are going into this, and I'm one tiny part of it. It doesn't mean you can't make your own choices and come in with what you believe is right, but it did put into perspective that it's just not all about you, man.
That's a valuable lesson to learn early. In 2010, you appeared in The Pacific, which I loved. Did you watch The Pacific miniseries on HBO? It's stunning. Produced by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, obviously. Yeah. What do you remember about your first interaction with Tom? Because I know he was apparently so taken with you that he cast you in his movie Larry Crown later. And he's talked about you, and he said that he was very impressed with you in your first audition. But tell me what you remember about that.
Tom's been great. Tom Hanks is exactly, I don't know if you know him or met him, but he's exactly what you want him to be. He's the guy you see is the guy you see. He's extremely special, and so is Mr. Spielberg. I can call Tom, but I can't call Steven Spielberg Steven. So
for now at least.
Still something I'm working towards.
Sure.
I remember seeing his notes on my audition, and he said, he was talking about another actor and me in the same breath, and he said, Malek is haunting, and I was like, ooh, wow. That's good. And
you played a real person.
I had actually auditioned for Meg Lieberman, and Meg Lieberman put me in this as a, what was it? It was for Medium. Remember that show, Medium? Sure, yeah. And I did a guest spot on that, and she brought me back with the help of another producer named Kirk Sadusky, who they came together and realized that maybe there was a part in there for me. Anyway, Tom saw this audition, and I'd never worked harder on anything because I thought I'd seen the Band of Brothers and blew my mind. Yeah. I thought if I can get this job, this would be everything. It would be everything, and I'd put everything I had into that. And I guess Tom liked it because he said that, and I came back a couple times, and then I got to read with Joe Mazzello, who is
future
bandmate in Bohemian Rhapsody, but also the young boy in Jurassic Park.
Yes. Can he call Steven Spielberg Steven?
I think he can, because
He's known him a long time.
Steven calls him Joey still.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes I called.
But the character you were auditioning to play, was it Snafu from the beginning?
The first read I had was for Lecky, and I think I did that way too earnestly, and they gave me another shot, thankfully, at Snafu, who was this.
What was his backstory?
He's Cajun. Muriel Snafu Shelton from Louisiana, and he was a real human being. I did a lot of research. Even during the auditions, I wanted to nail the accent, so I went and used some of that money I'd saved up to get a dialect coach.
Your accent's great. It's not overdone, which I know for that.
Well, I think the first audition I had was a little overdone. But then I thought, I didn't like it. I knew I had to rein it in. So I found a dialect coach who was actually from Louisiana, or had spent a lot of time there. His name was Jerome Butler, and he was terrific. And so much of that character came from that dialect coach. It just, as soon as I heard the musicality of what we were doing together, I was like, that's all there. Yeah. So much was there. And then read this book that it was based on called With the Old Breed, and it's still to this day one of my favorite books. It's the most visceral interpretation of war and soldiers in combat, that Marines in combat, that I've ever read. And I do like reading about history and those types of things. Anyway, I just worked on it as hard as I could over and over, and finally they told me I was going to test with Joe Mazzello. I was coming in to read with him and all the three main characters. I was like, one of the fifth or sixth characters down the line, but for some reason they brought me in to do this test. And I walked in, and Hanks was there. It was at his company, Playtone. All these executives and producers, and then all these guys outside waiting to come in. Everybody's, trying to pretend they're not freaking out, but you're pretty nervous. Tom walks in, leaves a bunch of dimes over his Coke machine, and he says, anybody want a Coke? Take a dime. They're only a dime. That's Tom Hanks for you. He's just trying to make everybody at ease. Walk in. Tom, he goes, he had just seen Night at the Museum. He goes, I'm a big fan of your work. And I just looked and I go, likewise. And they all laughed, so it was good. It was an icebreaker, but I was definitely not trying to make a joke. I didn't know what the hell to say.
Well, you were very haunting in your delivery of that.
I guess so.
Right. In keeping with
And I went in and did this audition with Joe Mazzello, and it was a really dark scene where my character is actually throwing some pebbles into this sawed-off head of a Japanese enemy who's been sitting there dead for a while, and it was a very, very intense scene. And I remember the casting assistant was getting really in our faces with the camcorder, moving, more than I'd ever seen a casting assistant move, and older than I'd ever seen a casting assistant. And I realized that's no ordinary casting assistant, that's Steven Spielberg. And then I went, holy shit. Don't stop talking. Say your lines. And in that moment, I remember it's either all gonna go to shit, right, or something really great is gonna happen. Let's pick the right move here, Rami. And fortunately, I did. I gathered all my confidence, and I said, let's give Steven the best show you could give him right now. Wow. And I don't know if that happened, but I walked out of there.
It did, yeah.
And I got the job, and wow, I could not believe it.
It's amazing.
Tom Hanks. This is the first time you'll hear Tom Hanks go, you need to start smoking cigarettes, and you need to, I mean, I was my size, and he goes, you need to lose weight, because I need everybody to look like they were in that period. This has to be as accurate as we can make it. They were all smoking, and in the Pacific, they were on the verge of dying. Wow. And as soon as he said that, I did everything I could to just get in shape. I was already smoking, so that was taken care of.
You were already method on that front.
Yeah. I got there, and they put us through a boot camp. Is this too much information?
No, it's never too much, no. And you shot in the South Pacific.
We went to Australia. And every night I just went home. Even before that, I knew I had this job for 6 months, so I just every night spent time working on this character. Just went and did my process of getting prepared and reading that book and sitting with whatever those stories. There's horrific stories. There were some really awful things happened in the Pacific Theater that the world was not aware of, and that made me, more inclined to tell that story. And we went to Australia, and at that point I was like, do I even need the boot camp? I knew I felt really good about it, but I was like, if that's gonna help, that's gonna help. And they had real Marines there training us, gave us these weapons from the 1940s. I was a mortarman, so I had to learn how to shoot a 60mm mortar with my new friend, Joseph Mazzello of Jurassic Park fame. And we figured all these things out together, and for days we just walked around carrying these rifles, these M1 Garands, learn how to fire them, learn how to fire this mortar. Something I'm oddly probably still skilled at because of how intense the training was. And that's it. We learned how to do everything that they could do in the 1940s over the course of days. And one night, I remember being out there with these guys. We'd forged such a great bond. And one night at 4 o'clock in the morning, I see and hear this alarming gunfire coming from about 200 yards away. And I thought, am I hallucinating? I mean, we've been out here for a bunch of days, and I thought, man, maybe I've put too much into this. But no, this army of men comes charging at us, yelling bonsai and all these Japanese words, and screaming at us. And sure enough, there's gunfire coming at us, and all of a sudden it's like, men, to your stations, and we all get our things together, and quickly you realize, oh my God, this whole time we've been training, they've been training an entire Japanese army as well. My God. And so in the middle of the night, it's like, I'm gonna cry talking about this. It's so fucking scary. But we ended up, manning our positions in the middle of the night in pitch black darkness. And I swear, it's not real, it's not happening, but your instincts kick in, and all of a sudden at this point we're firing blanks right back at them, firing mortars that they pop off. They don't go as far, but they go at this army, and we're in the middle of some fictitious combat that seems real in the moment, and I would never in any way compare it to anything that these men went through, but it gives you the tiniest taste.
And were they shooting this, or this was just
No, this was just for us, yeah. God. Just as an exercise to get us ready.
Well, there's a reason that the show feels so real, because it felt real to you.
Oh, I mean, at one point, we're coming off of these boats in the Pacific, the literal Pacific, that are landing crafts that actually hit the beach. And we're meant to jump off of them and hit the beach, take over this beach. Well, we planned for about 2 days to do the one shot, this beach landing in episode 5. There's explosions everywhere, and they're marked by orange cones. Hundreds of them. The cameramen are... we get ready to do this. We rehearse it 25 times. We did exactly 25 rehearsals of it. We're out there. Everybody, there's no place to use the bathroom on this. Guys are getting seasick. We're out for 3 days getting ready to do this beach landing. It's all going to happen in one take. There's going to be, all the cameramen are out there. It's the best cameramen you could ever ask for. They're all outfitted in camouflage gear, as we are. And I thought, that's odd. And they're the guys holding the cameras. But what I later found out is, in case anything goes to shit, the camera falls on their shoe or on their leg. I'm like, how bad is it going to get if these guys are going to drop their cameras?
Right.
Well, I quickly found out. We get ready to do this one take, and I've never jumped out of a Amtrak hitting the beach, but I got to tell you that preparation that these Marines gave us, it did help me a little bit to think, okay, I can do this. There were things I never thought I would be able to do, but in that moment, I prepared myself, and we got ready. The boat comes out of a larger boat. We hit the ocean, and there's the beach. Except this time it looks entirely different because these 100 orange flags and cones have been pulled out. And we were told to memorize where they were, and I did, but
oh my God.
I don't know where the fuck they are. So the fear of death is in you, right?
Wow.
And these guys are firing these what are they, 50 caliber machine guns out at the beach. Guns are, they were being fired out, and slowly but surely, we are going to hit that beach. Explosions everywhere. Already, I see boats hitting the beach. Other actors and other units are hitting the beach, and that's another moment. It's like, oh my God, this is happening. And then you hear, all right, lock and load, and there we go. We're locked and load with these rifles. I'm carrying a 60 millimeter mortar on my back. That's an extra 60 pounds with my pack, with these boots that no one should have ever gone to war with. And, right? And finally, these explosions are going. There's a few stuntmen on, right? If you can't get off the boat, they will throw you off the boat, right? Because nothing can stop. So I'm like, I don't care how much this fucker weighs, I'm getting off this boat.
Oh my God.
And I jump and I land in the water with my helmet. I'm soaked. I'm trying to carry this thing. I just try to get to the beach, right? And I push, and literally, you can't hear anything. Things are exploding in front of you. I look and I see Joe, and looks like he's shitting his pants. But I also think, oh man, this guy's really in it, and he's a great actor. So this is good. I'm just slowly trying to charge up the beach, and if there's explosions to my left, my right, they're all way too close. And sure enough, you see even the camera operators, that's when the cameras go down, and you're like, yep, you're glad you're wearing fatigues. And you just keep going. And there's blood and explosions all over the place. And finally, you hear a cut, and it's just like, oh my God. What's day 2 gonna be?
That's the ultimate be careful what you wish for, right?
I've never told that story outside of like our group of friends, by the way. These guys, we all keep up, by the way. It is a good story.
It's a very good story.
We really did become like brothers. It's crazy.
Well, it shows.
And Joe and I, Joe, to have him while playing Freddie Mercury, he ended up playing the bass player, John Deacon, and I could not have done it without him. Because every time I had any problem, we had a shorthand at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It's what one actor can give another actor.
That's amazing.
And Tom Hanks always told me, he said, one tool sharpens another, and I can definitely say it for that kid.
Tom, what a dreamboat, really.
Tell me about it.
He's a really special gift to us as humans. So before we get to Bohemian, I did want to talk about Mr. Robot, because it would be remiss if we didn't. And at first I was going to say, wow, Mr. Robot's so dark, but what you've just described sounds actually, in a lot of ways, a shorter period of time, but Mr. Robot probably wasn't as much of a stretch as we may have thought in terms of the darkness of it all.
People often ask that. They said, this has got to be the darkest character, but no, I think they both might be tied in some way, because in a more personal, intimate way, the character of Elliot was a very, very tortured human being. Yeah. But the experience of the Pacific was quite possibly, I think, the most devastating.
Because it was real.
It's real.
Right.
It was real. I mean, when you really thought about it, the book I read was by someone who wrote that. The character that I was playing in it was a real human being who had seen the most horrific things, and yeah, so that there was no getting away from that. Whereas Elliot, I could use my imagination and read about. I read a lot about mental health and that puts you in the perspective of how difficult it is to live in a mind that doesn't always feel like your own, and how that's brutal in its own way, and that can be a very lonely, difficult place, and a very, very difficult frame of mind to articulate to anyone, to even want to share with anyone. So that's got its own almost horrors to it.
For sure.
And Elliot, for a season, that first season was rough ride as well, because I wanted to get that one right, knowing that so many people who connected with him were, it was their story too. And
tell me about meeting Sam for the first time, Sam, the creator, Esmail.
Sam brought me in. I think he had read a lot of actors.
He had a hard time finding Elliot.
He did, yeah. And I don't know why. I just didn't think I was going to have a real shot at that one. But he'd seen the Pacific and liked the Pacific, liked my work in that, and thought about giving me a shot there. And I could see him after my first audition. He was kind of smiling. I think I came in the room and did something that a lot of actors hadn't. I don't know what that was exactly, but I haven't seen him smile quite that much since. So no, he's become like a brother to me. But I do remember him smiling in my first audition.
He had told me once that he was worried he was going to have to rethink Elliot, because he just thought, oh, I've created this character. I can't possibly find the person who's going to represent what was in his head.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
I guess that's possibly true. Yeah, I went in there and I just had I don't know, there was a bit of cynicism with the way I played the character that I think he was attracted to. It just wasn't as earnest as I think the previous reads had been. But I don't know, I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but I think quite early on I had somewhat of an idea who I thought Elliot was going to be, and I thought that Sam really liked where I was going. And then a series of steps. That was a number of auditions to get to the final one. I never thought that a guy named Rami Malek that looks like me 6-7 years ago is going to be the lead of a TV series.
And also a show that was a rebranding effort for USA. I mean, this was the first dark, layered, very complex drama that USA had done in a very long time, if ever. So sort of like you were the face of a full rebrand for this company, which is, I think, was pretty gutsy of them, really, with this show. Yeah,
it was, and I have to thank them. I mean, they've been so supportive throughout. Everyone, Universal Cable Productions and USA has had my back. I mean, we look at these studios sometimes and think, man, they're evil corp, and but they're not. I mean, everybody's got to make a buck, and so to take some artistic chances is something that I love seeing in television today. I feel like Sam and Mr. Robot and what we did with that show is kind of, it spawned this new idea of what TV was, and this very unconventional way of telling stories that we can now find so relatively available in so many networks, which is it's great for us, right?
Absolutely. And so you've wrapped season 4, and the final, it's going to air next year. That's the last season. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. So when does that air? Do you know yet?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
He's cooking that up right now.
And Sam's been busy with Homecoming. He has the Julia
Roberts.
See
Homecoming?
Yes. Amazing.
How good is that?
So good. Yeah. He's been busy.
He's busy, and he's great. I mean, Sam. This is one thing. I said, hey, I got this job playing Freddie Mercury. And he goes, yeah, right. I said, no, we're going to do this, and they really need me to start at the end of our season. So he found a way to shoot me out early, which, when it's your lead actor, that was difficult. So on the I think my last day of shooting on the 3rd season of Mr. Robot, I was in London a week later playing Freddie Mercury.
Wow.
Yeah.
Has an actor gone from one role to another that's that disparate? I mean, I can't think of anyone who's had to jump into something so totally different.
No, there were days, season 2 was not as taxing on me as the 1st season, and the 3rd season was hard. So I would work Monday to Friday on Elliot, and he's a very unusual human being, and then go to the most unusual human being in Freddie Mercury on the weekends. And I had Fox. They would fly out my movement coach, Paulie Bennett, to help me on Saturdays and Sundays, or if I had any few days, I would try to get to London and put in as many hours. I was really working myself to the bone, but I had no other choice. Right. But at times it was too much. I mean, there would be days I would just almost pass out on the weekend. And or Paulie says one day, I said, I'm going to go for a snack. And I was gone for 45 minutes. And I came back with an apple. And she's like, okay, you might need to take a break.
Need a little nap.
Yeah.
So before we get too detailed about Bohemian, tell me, what have the last few weeks been like for you? The reception, the box office. I mean, it's a rousing success, by the numbers, but also the fan reaction, the love. It just seems like a love fest. I saw it last week, and I felt so emotional when I left the theater. I felt moved. I felt a lot of things you don't feel when you see a quote unquote big studio movie necessarily, that just feels so personal, but also universal at the same time.
I've been so fortunate because I got to play Snafu, and I thought, this is such a unique character in the Pacific. I'll never be able to do something like this again. And then, years went by, and some great roles, some not so great roles. It is what it is. And then Mr. Robot came, and I thought, oh my God, this could be another incredible role, and it was. And I thought, well, this is never going to happen again. And I don't think it is after this. I mean, playing this human being was the greatest gift I'll ever have. And I almost don't want to do anything else.
It's hard.
Because it's like, it feels like it's all downhill. But it's a story you get to tell of that is just, it's so fulfilling, it's so rewarding, and it's so life-affirming.
But also hearing you talk about your family and growing up, I mean, there's so many similarities with what you've described, the dynamic in your family and your conservative parents wanting a better life. I mean, this is everything that played out in his own life. I mean, that must have been so amazing to have that within reach.
Yeah, I mean, look, I started thinking about Freddie Mercury, and I thought, I'm not a singer, I'm not a dancer, I've never touched a piano, but I don't know, I could see him on stage, and as amazing as he is, I thought, okay, maybe I might be able to move like that. I move in very awkward ways too. Those are just much more elegant than mine. But he's a god. I mean, you see him on stage, and I don't like saying that anybody's a god, but that guy's a rock god, and he's special, and there's no one that could really ever recreate him, or I don't know. He's so special, and it's like trying to. I don't know how you ever think you could capture it, and so that was the most daunting, scary part of it. And the only thing I thought is, okay, you know how you approach every other character, you get to those nuts and bolts and find out what makes them human. And I thought, just make him human. Bring him down to earth, demystify him. And I started to think, what makes him so great on stage? And I started to think, here's this young guy who grew up in Zanzibar, and at a very, very tender young age, his parents put him on a ship and sent him to India to go to school. I mean, he's a tiny kid going on a ship, going to a place he doesn't know, and told he's going to go to boarding school. And he does that for a number of years and creates some idea of what a family is there. And then he comes back home on a ship again. And his country's in the midst of this revolution. They were getting their independence from Britain, and his family decided they were going to flee that. And at 18, he was going to start a new life with his family in London. His name's Farouk Bulsara, and he's got a very big set of teeth, and he's very much a fish out of water. And I thought, man, that's pretty tough in and of itself. Right. And he's going to try to discover himself here in London, and at a really difficult time to even think about discovering your sexual identity as well. I mean, homosexuality, it was extremely stigmatized then. And still is.
It still is, yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. To think how hard that would have been for him, just to want to be this laser beam of a human being, and difficult to really show his true colors. And there's a part of him I feel that's just burning. It's just yearning to get out and share his beauty and his power and his audacity and freedom and authenticity with the world. And he gets on that stage given the opportunity, and he does just that. He looks everybody out in the audience. He makes you feel like he's looking right at you, and you're both just levitating all at once. And he's saying, we can be exactly who we want to be. We can defy every odd. And we can be whatever we want, our most authentic selves, and we can do it so powerfully in unity. And how glorious and beautiful is that? And that's him. Yeah. And that's the way that's the only way I could understand him, is that he was speaking to me, and he was speaking to all of us. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to give your story a shot, and I'll do my. And
you had the blessing of his
best.
Band. You had the blessing of the people closest to him, which was probably, I can't imagine it not happening that way.
I wouldn't have done it if that wasn't the case, and more to the point, I wouldn't have done it if that was the case, because they wouldn't have let me.
Right. Well, I read that Brian May said at some, during filming sometimes he would forget that you were Rami. That he was so taken back to that time in their lives that he felt transported. I mean, I feel like if that was the only feedback you got, that probably would have been enough to feel like you had made that much of an impression on him.
It was one of those Spielberg moments where I thought, is this going to make me so nervous that he's here? Right. And it didn't. It made me want to fulfill his happiness, fulfill his memories in some way. I knew I was never going to be Freddie. I never looked at him and thought, I'm going to be your Freddie. In fact, there'd be times when a photographer would be on set, and I didn't really even want the picture of me playing Freddie and him there, though it was a very surreal experience seeing older Brian May talking to a version of younger Freddie. For a lot of people.
Sure.
It blew people's minds.
Yeah.
But
I remember when the first image came out of you on stage, I think it was when you were shooting the Live Aid concert, I feel like it just blew up the internet that we finally saw you, and it seemed like that's when people started to just get like, oh, this is real, and look at this image. I just felt like it electrified everyone.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it was everything to have Brian May there from the start. I mean, he's so humble, and they're so classy, him and Roger Taylor. They're, I can meet actors, and I don't flip out that much anymore. Let's say I don't get as nervous around them, but meeting rock stars like them was a different story.
And also, they're so smart. I had no idea these guys were like on their way to being scientists and engineers. I mean, but now when you hear their music, you understand like these were really smart people making this music.
Oh my God.
It all makes sense after you see the
cannot
story.
take those songs for granted.
No.
There's a song called, Brian May is an astrophysicist specializing in planetary dust. Yeah. He also built his guitar, the Red Special, with his dad out of components he found in his garage. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
The same guitar he plays today. I don't know, 60 years later.
What would you say was your scariest moment on set? Beyond the, am I going to fulfill Freddie's, who he is? Was there a moment where you actually thought like, gosh, I'm not sure I'm going to get through this scene or this this blocking or this day?
The first few weeks were difficult because I was just getting my sea legs. I mean, I had put everything I had into this. I mean, every day it was piano lessons and singing lessons and not choreography, but movement. And it's like being back in school, but I wanted it. I wanted to, I've never, as hard as I worked on Snafu and Elliot, they still don't. They pale in comparison to what I did here for this, because I did not want to do this man injustice or the band. But I got to tell you, going out there at day one and shooting Live Aid, no matter how hard you worked, I just was inevitably still never prepared enough. And having Brian May there for the first time, that was the first time he saw the younger version of himself in Gwilym Lee, the younger Roger Taylor, and Ben Hardy.
They look so much like them, too.
Yeah, they do. They really do. But even Brian at times was playing with Gwilym's hair, and he would tell him, he's like, "You got all the moves right. Don't forget, you're a rock god." And he said that to him, like, "You can do all the work you need to do, but what I need you to have is that power and confidence," which was, something that I could overhear and at the same time try to muster that up, because I knew all the moves, but playing Freddie Mercury, you have to have a certain amount of confidence out there.
Of course.
And going out day one playing the greatest concert of all time, as far as I'm concerned.
So that was the very first thing you shot?
Very first thing we shot is coming out to play Bohemian Rhapsody at the height of their career.
Can we just do an interior somewhere or like a conversation?
Well, I really did think that, it was another Night at the Museum move where I was like, if this doesn't work out, there's just going to be a breakdown with Freddie Mercury on it tomorrow, and they're going to pack all this shit up or pack, So the fact, when I got the call sheet for day 2, I was like, thank God.
And did you have any access to Freddie's family? I assume his parents are no longer with us.
His parents aren't with us.
His sister, is she?
His sister
was she
is
involved at all?
Yeah, she came to set one day, and I don't think she was prepared for it because, Queen does a lot of stuff. They have.
They're still touring with Adam Lambert.
They're still touring with Adam Lambert, so she gets to go relive it there, and they have musicals that they've sometimes put on. We Will Rock You, but. I just don't know that if she was really aware that she was going to see someone emulating, her younger,
it's a lot.
Her older brother, but a younger version of that. So it was a lot for her when she came to set, and it was a lot for me because I'd been watching her and fallen in love with him and the family, and I've been listening to their mom talk for so long because she has a very unique accent and.
So you had recordings of his parents?
I had recordings of his mom, and and so I'd listen to her all the time, and then put an very proper English accent on top of that. But I always wanted a touch of their heritage to come through. And sometimes our producers would come up and say, "It's odd, but sometimes you're sounding a little Indian." And I would go, "Oh, really?" And then turn around and I'd have a little smirk on my face. And I'd be like, "Yeah,
that was your goal.
I'm getting it right. Yeah, that's good."
That's amazing.
Yeah. But
so
one cool thing is, and this is mind-blowing, after all this, we had some real hardships on this film, which one day we will talk about at length. They'll have their own hour and a half devoted to them. But the one really special thing when all was said and done, and I did see the final cut and went in and worked on it and tried to finesse it with our incredible producers, Graham King and Dennis O'Sullivan. I got to sit at Wembley where we had the premiere in London in front of 6,500 audience members with Brian May and Roger Taylor and Jim Beach, who plays Miami, all my castmates who I could not have got through this without, I got to tell you. Like, never depended on actors so much, and so lucky to have them. Got to sit with everybody. Our incredible cinematographer, Tom Siegel, my makeup designer, Jan Sewell, Julian Day, costumes, Aaron Hay, our production designer, John Warhurst, and he does the sound, and so many other people who were integral, whose names I don't have. Polly Bennett, of course, who did my choreography and movement. William Conacher, who did my dialect. I'll keep going, but the coolest part was I sat down and took all of this in, and it got quiet. We were waiting for the movie to start, and I looked at some of the cast members next to me and just kind of went, so quietly, but in a matter of moments, the entire stadium erupted.
Wow.
And I just looked over to see Brian May, who created that little ditty, and he had a big smile on his face, and I just could not believe that after all this, and this was a dream coming true. Wow. Then all of a sudden, the fanfare for 20th Century Fox comes up, and you think, man, wow,
this is real.
This is real, and you think back to when you first started, and you thought you might not ever work in this industry again.
Wow.
Then here it is, all happening in front of you, and then the movie ends, and I get pulled over because someone wants to see me, and it's Freddie's little sister, Kashmira, who's now reminds me of a very much older sister, or a maternal quality to her now, and we sit and talk about Freddie for most of the night after the party, and now I'm gonna go see her in about a week, and we're gonna go to dinner and have teas and hang out.
Gosh.
So I just cannot believe that this is happening to me. So the one thing is, I think my parents. I don't know if his parents ever imagined that life for him, and him having such a bold, audacious, creative career that he got to share with everybody. I don't know that mine ever thought that I'd be here having this moment and getting to talk to all of you. So it is something that I do not take lightly, and I'm very privileged and honored that I get to share with you guys.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. That's very special. And I think the thing for me with this movie and Freddie's story is knowing that all these sports fans all around the world who didn't know that they were singing the music of this guy whose lifestyle they may not have necessarily understood, it makes me so happy. It is just it's the unity we need right now. And if sports and singing that song before a sporting event brings us together, then so be it. I think it's very special.
There were a few people who I've heard have walked out of the theater when they find out Freddie's gay.
They didn't know.
And I'm like, whoops. And it's like, good fucking riddance.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, absolutely. But they still paid for their ticket. That's all that matters, right?
I'm sure they tried to get them.
So we have some wonderful audience questions, as you can imagine, some of which touch on Freddie, but also other subjects. So the first is from Terry. And Terry, where's Terry? Terry Sullivan? Oh, hello,
Hi, Terry.
Terry, and you've touched on this a little bit, but it's worth a more specific ask, which is how do you channel fear? Obviously, you felt some fear in tackling this role, and as an actor, how were you channeling these feelings? Was it something that you woke up every day and told yourself, okay, I'm feeling this, I'm going to use it this way? How did you work through that?
I guess in this situation, I had no time for fear, and boy, it was earlier on, there were moments where I was working in a dance studio, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to capture Freddie's magic in the 22-minute concert sequence that was Live Aid. I fortunately had a lot of help. I had people who really believed in me, and I think once I started to see one thing happening, or one physicality come to life, or his voice start to sound similar to Fred, what I was doing to start similar, I knew that the groundwork was somewhere in there, and I just had to have faith. And what I love about what we do is, I try as I get older not to just bottle all that in, but to actually share it. I used to not want to show anybody anything about how I was feeling, and put on the strong face, and now I think I'm very careful about who I share fear with, because you never know how that winds up in other people's hands. But I looked at this as whatever fear I have, I'm going to use to be constructive, and I'm going to power through. I just pushed myself so that if I was afraid of something, I worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And I just tried to address it. What's really making me scared in this moment? And if it couldn't be fixed, then that was a different step to take. But I tried to channel all that energy into what I was doing, and really trying to concentrate on where that fear was coming from and if it was real or not. And if it was real, then it had to be attended to. And once I attended to it in a way, once I looked at it and said, well, you can put the hours in to do this, or that's something you don't need to worry about as much because that will resolve itself somehow in post, whatever it is. I mean, there were moments when I thought, I don't even play the piano. Now I'm learning to play a couple songs on the piano, and I get to the script and I look at page 19 and then page 20, and I read the stage direction. It says, Freddie Mercury plays piano upside down. And I thought, that's a moment you get really scared, right? Or you start sleeping with the piano above your head, right? And every night
Waking
it's
up
like,
and playing
look at this
a song.
fun little thing I get to do before bed. Real fun. But that's what I did. I was like, let's enjoy all of this, you know? And then it became silly that I had a little piano, you know, above my mattress.
How much fear do you think Freddie felt as a performer? Because to us it seems that, you know, fearless is a word that comes up with him, but how much of that was natural, and how much do you think he really had to learn to feel comfortable when we see that Live Aid performance, which just seems like this like otherworldly, you can't imagine him not performing, but I can't imagine there wasn't some learning curve with him.
I can even see him in Live Aid when he steps out. You can't see it, and it's after watching it thousands of times when I can tell he's just a little bit more fragile. Right. It goes away almost immediately.
Because he hadn't performed like that in a long time.
It'd been a while to that many people, right. Yes. And they all came out there and they didn't think it was their audience, right? There were so many other bands, and even Brian May will tell you, he's like, I did not think that they were, you know, they at that point, you know, Queen, as they say in the film, as we say in the film, felt like dinosaurs to them. Right. The one thing they could do and knew is how to play to a large audience. Right. The one thing they did so well at Live Aid is they shortened all of their songs. They said play the hits, and they rehearsed. Those guys knew what they were doing so that they could be prepared and get out there and, you know, shine brighter than anybody else, and they did that day especially. I mean, that's when everybody, I've asked so many reporters that are still around
who were there that day.
Who were there that day. One I just was paying for something and his card came out of my wallet, and someone looked at me and they're like, you really did your homework. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I did.
Yeah. Also, the guy who played Bob Geldof, I actually thought that was old footage we were seeing, and then he walks away from the monitor. I'm like, oh my God.
He was terrific.
That was incredible.
Yeah. They could do a whole documentary.
I know, I wanted
Geldof.
More. I wanted more of the Live Aid
stuff.
But
I gotta say, I mean, I have never, on this set especially, just taken that fear and turned it into the most confidence I've ever had. And, you know, Freddie allowed me a lot of that confidence, but doing the work and being prepared gave me this sense of, there was this sense of, I don't know, the justice to what I was doing that no one could really strip away from me, that I felt like I was in the right. And it didn't mean that meant I was going to collaborate as much as possible, but I was going to put everything in this, and collectively we all were going to give it everything we had. And I think when you walk out there and try to change that aspect of fear and harness that fear and turn it into something that galvanizes people and raises everyone's game, and especially when you have someone to look up to like Freddie and Queen, you really feel like that's something you can get behind, that you're all united in doing something. And when you're united, you start to lose that fear. I think you just got to be able to share it with everyone and have that conversation, because I don't care who you are, how many times you've been holding a camera or pulling focus on something or done that, makeup, you're out there on day one and everyone's scared. Everyone does not know how it's going to come together. But by the end of the day, when it does, everyone, whether they know it or not, realizes that it was a collective effort. And what happened on that day, when it was successful, was not because of one or two people. It was because of everyone.
Yeah, very good. And Mostafa, where's Mostafa? In the back? Can't see. Oh, hello. Mostafa would like to know, and this I've actually often wondered this too, what was your family's reaction when you told them that you were going to be playing Freddie Mercury? Or did they have one?
I think they were, well, my mom was worried because she'd seen me bust my ass for so many years and then get Mr. Robot, and that was great, right? I mean, what a win. And then it's like, I think she
was worried about the pressure.
The pressure, and why throw all that away on trying to do something that may not be able to be done. I mean,
did they know Freddie? Did they know Queen's music?
I think my mom had a really quick education from my brother at that point of, yeah, you might want to get to know who this is.
Right.
And now she tears up when his name comes up because she's like, what a sad loss, early loss. And it's kind of beautiful because I just never thought my mom would tear up at thinking, about the loss of someone who was just so foreign to her, and now she knows every Queen song.
Well, she sees your billboard all over the valley too, probably when she's driving around. That must be surreal.
Yeah, that's true. Seeing a billboard is pretty surreal. Yeah,
that's why it feels really real. It's large. It's it's part of your daily life driving down the road.
It's large. It's only really hit me that how terrible this could be only recently. I really thought, look, you get the role of Freddie Mercury, and you know how hard it is to get a job. It's like, yeah, I'll do it. Of course I'll do it.
Right.
And it would be a disservice to any other actor, I think, if you passed this up and said, no, well, it's so few moments out there where you get to do what you've dreamt of doing. And so there was a point where it was like, yes, of course, yeah, and it was scary, but it's only recently where I did look back and go, wow, that was
it must feel like a dream.
A pretty daunting thing to think you could undertake, but
wow,
it happened.
And Inez, where's Inez? Oh, there you are, hello.
Hi, Inez.
This is a great question that is asked often and answered often. Have you ever thought about giving up acting? And how did you manage those feelings? And how did you get past that?
Man, did I ever think about giving it up? Yes, absolutely. I thought about giving it up a lot.
When was the most profound time you felt that?
Let me go through it. In New York, I was waiting tables at a really dark place that people were doing drugs at all night, and I was coming home at 5. I was not doing them. I was just trying to collect a paycheck and waking up, going to work at 5 p.m. and leaving at 5 a.m. And for a while there, I was like, this is awful, and this is what I'm doing to support my acting career. Fine. And then I got through that, and after school, I was working at a fast food restaurant after putting in 4 years at a theater school. And, I would, if I saw anyone that looked like a producer, I was putting my headshot and resume in their to-go bag. At times I thought, oh man, what are you doing? Like this is what it's come to after that. You're $100,000 in debt, and this is what you think is going to pay off for you.
Right.
And one day I really did. I did try to think about doing something other than being in food service for a job, and I started looking into getting a real estate license.
Oh no.
Would you believe that?
No.
And that lasted for like 3 days, and I go, no, definitely not gonna do that. I'm going to be an actor. And there was a part of my DNA that just knew. I just had to look at it and say, that is definitely something I'm not cut out for. But yeah, I don't know what I did. I think about it now because I'm of the belief that this comes and goes, and I'm having a great wild ride right now, but I could be back anywhere at any moment, and so I'm trying to really take this in. I remember working with Christian Slater, and the first year we didn't know how Mr. Robot was going to do, and it got a lot of love critically, and he showed me something. He was reading the New York Times, and it was a good review, and he looked at me before we went on stage, on set, and he goes, take this in, man. Take this in, because this does not happen. And I have, ever since he did that, I've been trying to savor every single moment, because I got to tell you, there were moments where I did not want to get out of bed as an actor, where there's really nothing to get out of bed for, but it was there were pretty low moments, as I know we've all had in any career that we've aspired to do.
Especially creative careers.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Not that all jobs aren't hard, but I think the creative life
it sucks the life out of you when it's not going well, and it's difficult, but I think just really savor all those small gains, because they collectively add up to, whatever it is. If it's something small that just reignites your love for what you do, or your appreciation for what you can do. I mean, we all have this special gift and this talent, and not everybody has that. And I think that in and of itself is it's propelling enough to know that exists in your fiber, that's in your DNA, and it's burning, and it gets brighter and brighter, and sometimes it's not as bright, but it has the power to really shine at any given moment, and it will.
Well, that's a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That was amazing.
Good luck. Thank you.